ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this fireside chat. I have a dream with none other than Rohini Nilekani. I don't think she needs any introduction, but she's the chairperson of the Rohini Nilekani Philanthropies, an author, a philanthropist, and many, many other characteristics that define what a new India can be shaped by. So, Rohini, really looking forward to your thoughts today on how we can shape the new India, as a country, as people who have come together to not only celebrate what we have achieved, in 75 years of our independence, but more importantly, talk about and think through what we can, in the next 25 years, as our honorable Prime Minister likes to, really refer to this this period, really now as one which is going to be the bright part of what India can be as we move from India at 75 to, India at 100. So very, very warm welcome and thank you for joining us here. To begin with, share a little bit about your journey as an author and then to a philanthropist. And I know both of those kind of professions require to be a very giving person. You're giving a lot in different shapes and form, but just a little bit about what motivated you to be a part of these two things, and then really step into how we can capture your vision for what India can be in the future.
Thank you very much, Rajan, and namaste to everyone who's listening. I think it's a really important moment in India, and I'm so glad that CI has held this discussion for the last 15 years. I remember you all starting it way back in 1960, and it seems like such a different time now. Very happy to be a part of this chat, Rajan, and you asked me, so I'll keep it very brief. I was a journalist right out of college. I went and did, I just got into journalism, just dove into it, found that it suited me very well. And from there, I started writing as well. And then the journey from, so right, as a journalist, you really get to see what's happening around in society from a different lens than you would as, say, an entrepreneur or just a homemaker or a businesswoman or whatever. And so it allows you to see different people's lives. And I was always very interested in issues of justice and inclusion. And I think being a journalist and watching other journalists do phenomenal work helped me to see how much work there still was so that everyone could be part of the vision of an India that had abundance and justice for all. So I guess from there, once I became wealthy and found myself being called a philanthropist, I think the journey was easier because I was a journalist and a writer. Oh, you are on. I can't hear you.
Now, I think what you said is about this switch, right? Especially when you're seeing the issues,
Yes.
at the ground level, then to be able to figure out, what could be the change that can be made is really a great way to people to understand. Yeah.
No, it's a very important issue of our times, Rajan, if I may flag it right at the outset. How can we cultivate in ourselves the empathy to see from the other side, right? Not just from one other side, but from many other sides. And I think that is a societal muscle that we all need to develop in this India, which is moving so fast in so many directions. But if we lose that sense of empathy, where we are able to see from the shoes of others less fortunate, then all our vision will not come to fruition, right? So that's what keeps me awake, and I suspect my husband Nandan as well. How can we be part of something where a lot of people are included in the good vision for our beloved country?
No, and this thought is probably what made you the best grassroots philanthropist, as Forbes has called you this year. Because really making that change and understanding, like what you said, empathy, because the millions or hundreds of millions, in India that have to be moved out of poverty, and really, making that meaningful difference in their lives can be a big part of what, I think we can contribute. But tell me, when you go about with philanthropy and working, in those areas, where do you see the challenges, right? I mean, what would enable you to do more in a way, if you were to think about it in that context?
Yeah, I think right away, see, my philanthropy comes from a very simple vision. Although we do work across many sectors, whether it's media, justice, water, environment, and active citizenship, and many other portfolios, what joins those different sectors together is a very simple philosophy, which I've reiterated so many times that people might be bored of it, but we must move towards making a stronger, better society, right? What I call Samaj, so that both Sarkar and Bazaar can be accountable to a strong Samaj, which wants, of course, to develop, which wants prosperity for all. So all my work is about making Samaj stronger. So how does Samaj become stronger? When institutions of association in the Samaj become very strong, when moral leadership is very sound, when innovation is flourishing all around, right? So those are the kind of things I like to support. And for all those things to happen and to reduce the trust deficit between Samaj, Bazaar and Sarkar, at least I believe that we need very strong civil society institutions and organizations. So through my philanthropy and partly through Nandan's philanthropy as well, sometimes we do it together, sometimes separately, we try to support good ideas, individuals and institutions that take this inclusive agenda forward. And I think what is needed today is little bit, I believe, Rajan, on this journey that we all have a common goal. India should prosper, India's people should prosper, feel happy, be abundant, and be leaders in the world. I think the trust divide between the sectors has to be, together we have to reduce what has become a bit of a trust deficit. And I trust in civil society institutions to help to do that. So I believe one of the things we need to do is to enable civil society organizations to flourish. And I think right now there is a bit of an issue going on there. And I hope we can all talk through it and resolve it, because India's democracy needs civil society institutions so that it can thrive. Because civil society institutions are not handmaidens, okay? They are mirrors. And sometimes we don't like what they show us about ourselves. But it is only when we can see what they show that we can course correct. And if we sometimes shut the mirror and we don't look, then we don't course correct fast enough. So whether it's journalists, whether it's the media, or whether it's civil society institutions, they give faster feedback loops because they are very much in touch with people and their lives. And so we try at least to support things which allow those feedback loops, positive feedback loops to kick in. And I think we need to smoothen that path a little bit at this juncture if we want to get to where we all together want to get.
I think the intent is very clear, right? All multiple stakeholders, kind of trying to really make that difference happen, right, on the ground. I think that is very clear. It's the mechanics and the process of doing that. And, through this journey of India at 75 also, like which we were talking of, it started with India at 60, brought multiple stakeholders together, civil society, government, industry, academia, literally volunteers and housewives and students and, young people. I think we are all deeply committed, to the cause. It's about us getting a little better organized, like what you said, building trust.
How do we, Rajan, together learn to reduce the friction to collaborate? I mean, we try something, we have built a framework. It's one of many frameworks that is possible called societal thinking, which means all our problems are so complex and they're like large societal problems, right? And they can never be solved or resolved unless Samaj, Bazaar, Sarkar all get involved. Now, if everyone is working in silos, civil society is working without trusting the government, if Bazaar is working without trusting civil society, we will not be able to solve these because these problems cannot be solved by single sectors. However committed the government is, however committed the market is, we can't solve any of these complex problems, right? Unless we figure out ways to allow everyone to do what they are best at. So we have been thinking about this framework called societal thinking, and it's applicable to any sector where we use technology to help reduce the friction to collaborate and to engage as many innovative nodes in that process as possible. So these are some of the challenges before us. How do we get various elements who can contribute to solving the problem to work together more seamlessly?
No, so you give me an example, right? You said this framework for societal thinking. I think it's a very powerful concept, right? Because everybody does what they're good at, but still, every gap that needs to be filled is filled, right? Because you still fill 3 gaps, and there are 2 glaring gaps. That whole ecosystem of prosperity, progress, gets jeopardized. Give us a few examples of what has worked and what did that happen.
So from my experience, I'll give you 2 very briefly. One was before the framework came up. At that time, we had started this societal mission called Pratham Books in 2004, where we were trying to solve a simple problem, which is that India's children simply did not have enough books to read, written by Indian authors with an Indian context in multiple Indian languages, easily accessible all over the nation. And we set out to do that. And although I have retired from it, the mission has gone forward very rapidly. And today, more than 100 million children across the world, not just in India, are using and reading the content on Pratham Books and Storyweaver, its other website. Okay. So how did that happen? That happened because we said that we will unbundle the problem, that it is because there are not enough readers, writers, illustrators, editors, translators who have been activated. And yet in this nation of storytellers, everyone can participate in this simple societal mission to get a book in every child's hand. So we were actually, through creating an open source platform within the Creative Commons, we were able to unlock all the marvelous writers and teachers who wanted to help, parents who wanted to get involved, children who wanted to read. And today it is one of the big success stories in the country's mission to get our children reading and learning. And that you can only do if you unlock the potential of the state to participate, if you unlock the potential of the bazaar, because Pratham books are also sold, and unlock the volunteer nature of our society and its civil society institutions who participated in this mission, so that in a decentralized way, everybody did what they could. And today we have one of the biggest successful stories in the world in children's publishing. Okay, then if you take that further to X-Step, which Nandan and I and Shankar set up a few years ago, the problem of children's education has a lot to do with how teachers know how to teach. And the union government was very keen that we help them set up Diksha, which is a platform on which teachers can learn from each other. So it's a kind of peer-to-peer network, and we help them to build that. And the kind of magic that has happened on that network, where the parent community, the teacher community primarily, and children have been able to access all kinds of, they have been able to access more learning opportunities, and especially during the pandemic, than would have been possible without Diksha being set up. And so it was envisioned, if we think and design in a way that we can respond at the scale of the problem, and we don't forget to bring in all 3 sectors, I think we can move fast to crack some of our more challenging issues. And climate change is really going to force us to bring out all our creativity and innovation and collaboration now. Don't you think?
No, absolutely. I think climate change is now right at the center of everything that the world is discussing. But how does philanthropy come into climate change? Like, how do you see the role of philanthropy?
Yeah, thank you for asking that, because I really wish we can inspire more philanthropists to think of climate change. See, there are big players who look at more on the mitigation side, right? There are players around the world who are looking at the clean energy transition. And that's critically important, of course. And if there are big ticket donors who are willing to put big money into looking at our green energy, whether it's hydrogen or how do we get away from fossil dependence, I mean, that is really welcome. And there's a huge opportunity to partner with the state, of course. But there's another side to it which affects people as a whole, right? So how can we support organizations all over India? And there are fabulous ones that are trying to understand, first of all, what is happening. So the think tanks, the academic institutions, the research institutions that are first trying to put together a picture of what may happen. And there are institutions that are working with these institutions to say, unfortunately, if things happen like this, then how can we prevent loss of life, prevent the absolute environmental destruction? How can we help people be more resilient? What do they need to learn now in order to be able to be flexible in their response when things go wrong? And there are a lot of people, a lot of civil society institutions doing really good work on that. I hope Indian philanthropists will come forward and put some risk capital and hard capital into this effort. There is also something called the India Climate Collaborative, which is bringing a lot of funders and a lot of practitioners together. So there are tremendous opportunities for us on the mitigation side with big bucks, but also on the adaptation side with a lot more innovation capital in, because our people, we are at great risk, but we are a resilient society and we need to really strengthen our resilience. And philanthropy has a role to play for sure in this process.
We always look at philanthropy from the, aspect of what's the quantum of wealth, the quantum of money that is given. But, when you add that to the skilled volunteering, or you ask just the time that people can spend with others to make a difference. One of the things that, even through one of our foundations at the group, Jetline Group, Jetson, we've been promoting is individual social responsibility. And how do we get individuals to watch what they sustain and how they consume water, how they use different aspects, and really move from a corporate social responsibility, which is really about how much money you spend, or individual philanthropists, to a social responsibility that is more around action and what you can do with time. Like so many of the things that you said, that can affect other children and others. It's just about giving time. Great content, take it out to people, educate them. So I think there's a huge role that corporate sector and what you rightly said, combined with civil society, can play to help realize the ambitions of a government, right? At any government at any level, right? Whether it's at a district or a state, or at the center, really wants to see prosperity, amongst their people and uplift the country as a whole. So I think as we think about this collaborative nature of coming together, I think there is, again, like what you raised, the role of philanthropy, particularly in climate change, right? The role of philanthropy, especially when it goes across generations, so what we call like now gen, or philanthropy as a strategic investment that will trigger, a different kind of change. I think these are the themes, Rohini, that we believe if we can kind of, like what you talked of, that framework for society thinking, how, what could be frameworks around which, philanthropists can come in and, whether it's 10 rupees to whatever it might be, can contribute, but that contribution combined with all the things that you said, Sarkar, Bazaar, and, all of that can create a greater impact. Any thoughts around that?
Yeah, sure. First of all, I think Indian philanthropy is at a very exciting stage because so much wealth, as you people know better than I do, has come into India. We talk about unicorns, and these are often young entrepreneurs, and I found them already open to asking the question, even before they realize the value of their notional unicorn status, they're already asking, what should we be thinking of to give forward? And that's a real sea change, and I hope it spreads like wildfire, okay? So, but how do we help such people who want to give forward but don't quite know how to do it yet because they haven't had the practice? I think there are lots of organizations that have come up for precisely this purpose, and old philanthropy can support those intermediary organizations so that for new philanthropists, there are ready resources to just jump into philanthropy. So that's one thing. The second thing, of course, is, as you said, it's not just the extremely wealthy, but a lot of others who are wanting to give forward in a meaningful manner. We already have a lot of retail philanthropy in India over centuries and millennia, where people just help each other in any crisis. And that feeling of our society, that that tradition and those values have to be nurtured at all costs. And there are, again, organizations that are reimagining retail philanthropy. How can we get individuals, as you said, to exercise their individual responsibility in a structured manner? That's happening too, and that's very exciting to support. The last thing I can think of to answer your question is, see, there are many things coming up, like Living My Promise, Founders Pledge. Of course, there's a giving pledge for ultra high net worth individuals, and I hope more Indians will join that, as Nandan and I and others have. And there are many such. See, when you have satsang, when you have a community to go to, then you feed off each other's excitement about the joy of giving and giving strategically. So there are intermediary organizations doing this. There are lots of good civil society organizations to give to. The bridging is happening. And the most exciting thing is the now generation wants to participate immediately and not wait till they're old like me to start to give forward for our country's progress immediately. So the opportunity is immense. We have to not drop the ball at this juncture. We have to make sure that philanthropy is seen, and we have to be transparent about our philanthropy. I'm sorry, Rajan, the days of saying, nahi, hum very quietly dete and all is over. There is no harm. We are not doing something wrong when we do philanthropy. It's not to boast, it's to inspire. And I think that's very important, that it is transparent and seen. Again, not to boast, but to inspire. So all these things are going to keep the cycle of giving from the individual citizen to the most wealthy person in India. And for the most wealthy persons in India, I would also say, you really have to be seen to be philanthropic and do it, not just do it and be seen to do it. Because I think there is beginning to be a sense of, why is it that only so few people have so much money? How is that going to serve the whole of India in the next 25 years unless that wealth is seen to be helping the whole of the country, right? So these questions are on the public table. They are in the public discourse, and the rich, and that includes me, have to be seen to use our wealth responsibly. And so there are many people ready to help, but this ball must roll and become bigger of giving forward.
What inspires philanthropy? Like what you rightly said, right? People say, it's not to boast, but, philanthropists also sometimes expect recognition, or you get, some financial tax breaks. So, and very rightly so, right? Because you say my dollar or my rupee spent will go that much further if I'm given, a good financial kind of a break to be able to, or inspire me to do more. So recognition, financial, considerations, these inspire more philanthropy. But what else, or what according to you really inspires more philanthropy?
I think, the most sustainable thing in human history and on this planet is people's need to help other people. I think that is the most sustainable thing. Have you ever seen a society ever in human history where people have not tried to help others in distress? I think we are programmed to help other people, and if it is made easy, we will do more of it. And so I think there is, and we all know the neuroscience of how you feel when you help someone. It's not even by giving $1 million. Even if you help a blind person cross the road, okay, you help the blind person, but how did you feel, right? That we are wired to help other people because we can see ourselves in other people. Empathy is there. There are very few people who don't have that natural empathy. So I think when you start giving, and you would give for many reasons, somebody can say tax breaks, this, that, but when you start giving, the joy of giving kicks in, your sense of purpose, you feel a sense of purpose. Life has more meaning. And then, of course, you get immediate feedback if you're doing good things and people are telling you that this is working. And everyone wants to live in a better society, Rajan. So philanthropy has many motivations. Society must celebrate philanthropists, but without putting them on some pedestal as though they are better than anybody else. But celebrate the acts of giving by everybody, because that also helps. When people know they are being celebrated and that they are being understood for what they are doing, that's also inspiring. So there are many reasons, but mainly I believe the reasons are intrinsic.
So having a a philanthropist as an integral part of society, playing or fulfilling one role in a larger societal context, could be something that we could look over, 25 years. And how do we have in a country of, 1.3 billion people, I don't know, 100 million people who just say that they are philanthropists, and that's that job or their role, in the country as we move towards, India at 100. But no, I think a very powerful point you made, because it's intrinsic, it is natural, it's human, to be able to have the need to help people. I think very, 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 very well put. But we still talk of India, Rohini, where there is inequality, right? I think, any progress that we see in a country like India, the non-negotiable, as we say, of this journey of India towards global leadership is inclusivity. It's really about being able to do that at scale, making, everything that we do, affordable for all, and getting more and more people. That challenge has got accelerated, I think, with the pandemic, and other things. So what do you think can help balance that, right? I mean, is there something that we can do to ensure that, inclusive development is never compromised, as we move forward?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously very, very hard, right, to balance everything, because sometimes when you do pull one thing out, the other things fall back, and it's very hard to balance that. And that's the really, I really don't envy the politicians of today anywhere in the world, because their lives have, their mandate has become so much more complex to fulfill. But I think India is in a really good space to take off at a very good point. I think we forget how much the last 75 years have sowed the seeds for the moment. It's no use saying that, history begins at this point or that point. Since the moment of independence, every Indian has been striving to arrive at where we are now, which is hopefully in a place where India can, really innovate our way. Already we have seen such a reduction in extreme poverty. The pandemic did set us back, and we must never forget to acknowledge that, like everywhere in the world, in India, through the pandemic, set people back who had just found their way out, right, out of poverty and were feeling confident. So support for them, of course, is going to remain extremely critical. But otherwise, as my husband Nandan is very optimistic about this, India's digital revolution has made it so possible to include the last person, or what I like to call the first person, right? And in so many other ways, so much innovation has been unleashed. A new sense of pride has been unleashed. If we can tap all this without forgetting our tradition of democracy, inclusion, right, and justice for all, I think if we don't forget that and we move on that path with the goal of, as the Prime Minister says, right, sabka saath aur sabka vikas, then I can't see any other country that is on as good a wicket to be able to do. We keep our moral frameworks and values of inclusion and justice side by side. At least I believe that very strongly. And I think we can do it. Why can't we? 5,000-year civilization with so many lessons already learned.
And that's the beauty, right, about the country. It's not only 75 years, it's that rich culture, that rich heritage. At one point, India had 35% of the global GDP, so to say, and it kept decreasing, over the years. We're down to probably a single percentage point, but now is the opportunity to grow it back. And I think it's that deep-rooted culture and, what you rightly said, the ability for us to take everyone along that will enable that to happen. As a matter of fact, I strongly believe it's not only us taking people from India along, it's actually being the stabilizing factor for the world at large, literally taking all of humanity, it comes upon India. Because even if you look at what is happening around the world today, right? I mean, we are that one little stable balancing power in the world. We do have a role to play, I think, at a larger level. Once we are able to, ensure that we are able to get our people who are the citizens of India, out to a particular point. And I think the world is looking for us to be able to get into that position. So as we look towards that, Rohini,
So Sarvena is the important part of Sukhino Bhavantu, right?
Correct.
So,
Correct.
And that's what we've been saying for millennia now.
Yeah. So what's your vision for India? Like what's your vision for India? Like if you say my India, and if you dream, the India 25 years from today, you see what's the India you want to leave for the next generation. What's that dream? Where is it? What's that big moment or that picture that you would like to paint for us?
I think I once saw an article about reimagining abundance. Because I feel that while we talk of material progress, it's natural because that's easy to measure, right? But I would like to see an India, I mean, it's a bit idealistic, but it's a young country and young people are idealistic, okay? So a country in 25 years where, yes, there is economic sufficiency for all, everyone, okay? Economic sufficiency for all. It's not like we want to become a country of billionaires, God knows. There's enough research to tell you that that's not what is going to lead to people's happiness. Sukhino Bhavantu doesn't happen if everyone becomes a millionaire, even if that were possible. So imagine if we learned to use both the female and male and all energies in between to nurture our country's land, its earth, its soil, because I really care about the environment. And if we with too much of the environmental capital, all our other things that we are doing will not work, right? So I think a country that is economic sufficiency, that is looking for spiritual progress as much as material progress, that is able to nurture its environment. 3 or 4 things keep people happy. Much research has shown that, okay, being in nature. But if you're destroying nature and if we don't preserve the best parts of it, we won't be able to get that happiness. And being with friends and having associations, okay, of community. So more than just material progress, if we can have metrics for some of these things, because eventually you want a society that is both prosperous and happy. And so if I saw in India 25 years ago, I would be looking at all these metrics. Of course, economic, spiritual, however we figure out how to define that, and nurturing of this planet in which we have been placed.
Often Bhutan says you have to measure, gross happiness index. Right, yeah. And what you say, besides the the economic impact of that, but you touched upon a very important point of the spiritual index, right? I mean, there is something in India that India is providing to the world, right? Like if you see areas like mindfulness, yoga, all of things that make people far more responsible, enable them to understand their own capacity better so that they can, perform at a different level compared to that. All of that is going out from India to the world, right? It has traditionally, been there. How do we leverage that strength, as we look ourselves forward? How do we really leverage that strength for the betterness of, everything in planet or, people as we move forward?
Well, today's a good day to ask that question is Buddha Purnima. And, the Buddha inside us is always there to be harvested. And when I say Buddha, I don't mean particularly the saint of any one particular religion, but Buddha as the spiritual source in all of us. And God knows there's enough across all the religions that have flourished in India that allow it to go from beyond religion into spirituality. And I think that's what the West wanted to take. And that's what the East has been different in terms of how it organizes its societies, right? And I think India has so much to give forward from that. But I do feel that we should not get carried away also, if you don't mind my saying so, because if we do it from ahankar, that we are better than anyone else, it just won't work, right? So if we are able to say that with humanity, we have progress and we have some things to offer, it is more likely to be received. But to do that, like they say, physician, heal thyself. I think those in this country of such rich traditions, such syncretic traditions, to somehow find the basis for harmony amongst all religions, all communities, all and of course the divisions of caste remain India's big challenge, right? So looking inward and outward at the same time so that we can harmonize better is, I think, the challenge before us today. And I think young people get that.
Yeah, I think today's generation is what you rightly say is able to relate to a lot of these, but in a very different way, right? Especially looking at the situations, around them. And you talked of ahankar and ego. Therefore, when it's a tough line, right, to go, because what happens is once you attach ego, then you get attached to the outcomes. How do you still be detached to what you're doing, but still continue to make the impact? I think.
I mean, I'm just a normal citizen.
Yeah.
I can't answer that.
Yeah.
But I think it's best to frame it in terms of inclusion and justice, right? If we hold the mirror to ourselves, then sometimes the right path does reveal itself. So we want prosperity for all and not just for some. So what does that mean, right? There has to be some kind of restraint. There has to be some kind of actual processes put in place so that we are not ruled by law, but that we have the rule of law, and that our founding constitutional principles are really understood by a lot more people than they are. Less English and more understanding the spirit behind the founding constitutional values of this country. And at 75 years, they remain more relevant than ever. So to use them as a springboard for the next 25 years, I think that's how we might get there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's probably the only way we will get there. If we are really able to turbocharge, where we are today to be able to make such a meaningful, difference. I'm going to take a few questions, Rohini, that we might have, from some of the audience that is here. The first question is, do you feel more productive investment is needed for social sectors like skill development, healthcare, environment protection, energy, and employment generation? Do we need more productive investment?
No, I couldn't agree more. I think we need more of our brightest minds, and we already have quite a few of them engaged in these questions. But I think we need more philanthropic capital come in to build the capacity of people to take the challenges that are to come. So therefore, it's not the old-fashioned kind of skilling. Today, we have to skill for things that we don't even know. We have to skill for people to understand how to deal with complexity, how to deal with uncertainty. And all that, since there is no fixed curriculum that everybody has the answer for that, it's going to need a lot of experimentation and innovation. And that requires philanthropic capital, because that is risk capital. And if a lot more people could come into this, I think for such a young country that is going to face, like everybody else, so many challenges on the environmental and other fronts, that capital, if it is used smartly, I think it's going to make the difference between resilience and failure. So yes, I hope more and more people will put their minds, hearts, and pockets into these spaces.
So if you were to look at, what India should do in the next 200 days, right, in terms of priorities, right? We have a lot of priorities, right? But if you look at it from Rohini's lens, right, what would you prioritize, today, right? Today and now?
That's a really hard question for me to answer, suddenly thrown at me like that. I bet some other people could answer it very well, but that's a very short period of time to. The one thing I'm right now interested in is, there are so many things to do. One, next 6 months, get children back on the learning track, Those who fell back during the pandemic, back on their feet, whatever it takes, Number 3, something that I'm interested in, which is, let's look at all our laws. Let's look at all our laws. And some of them, and the government is very much wanting to do this exercise. How can we fast track rationalizing many of our laws to free up more innovation among citizens, One thing is this community, which I'm sure Rajan, CII, and all of you are interested in, but I'm talking at the Samaj level. Some of our laws are quite restraining for societal innovation. So looking at laws and rationalizing them so that we can just unleash societal innovation without fear. So if I had to choose these 3 things, these are not easy to do in 200 days, but I'll focus on them. Getting all children back on the learning track, and a lot is happening, more needs to happen. Looking carefully at those who lost out during these last 2 years, helping them back on their feet, because that's what they need the most And India needs them to be back on their feet too. And number three, just looking at our laws and legislation framework so that even the laws and policies written forward are written in a framework where crime and punishment, action and deterrence are comprehensively understood and defined. These are the three things I would choose. And of course, I'm always going to say on the environment side, what can we do to nurture our water, soil, and air?
I think that that's a very a subject very close to your heart, right? Especially water security, soil, air, and all that we have, on Earth that is going to ensure that we can all leave behind a planet at least which is which people can inhabit it, and we don't have to really look necessarily for options on other planets where, of course, the human imagination and vision is going. So I know we have the last few minutes left, and I'm going to take you onto that imagination path now. As we Nandan's also technology. You've also been part of that journey through all of this, and technology has played such an important role, Rohini, and it's continuing to play, right? You can add the word digital before any word and it makes sense. So you add the word tech, agri-tech, digital health, it's just making sense today, right? So technology is going to play. So, there are so many new technologies, and those technologies can make an impact. You take AR, VR, blockchain, AI, so many things. And I'm sure you must be dealing with a lot of these jargons in different shapes and formats. And I know you've talked about moral leadership at some point, right? We've talked about technology being able to, bring about transparency, bring about an ability for us to reach more people at scale. Many of the larger solutions that society needs, since you're talking of Samaj, are being enabled through technology, right? So if you were to see the role of technology, particularly, as we move to the future, and enable better economic livelihoods and strength for people, how do you see that shaping? And if so, which specific aspects of technology? I know it's a little thing, but again, imagining, science fiction is now becoming real thanks to technology. So where would you, take us in that journey?
So, of course, being with Nandan, I get schooled a lot in his vision. So I'm beginning to buy into it, though I'm not at all a techie. But I can buy vision for technology for inclusion, okay? But because of where I come from as a journalist, as a writer, as a philanthropist, the thing that I'm interested in is, of course, always if we can remember that technology is the means and not the end. And sometimes we forget it, technocrats forget it. Technology is the means, it is not the end. Yes, it might be very fascinating and exciting and all that, but it is only the means. Don't forget what it's supposed to be, because otherwise the means can distort the end. So I think that's number one concern. Secondly, I think in a young country that is going digital so fast, okay, I think we also have to worry about how digital is affecting people's lives and their mental health as well. And we have seen a lot of stuff happening. So how can we get together? How can we constantly keep on the table the discourse on where these technologies are headed? There are, for example, in biotechnology, there are bioethics committees all around the world, right? For technology, now there are a lot of people questioning how far should these technologies like AI be allowed to go? And I think we need a public discourse around these things. It should not be like, oh, these technology issues are too big and it's only meant for technologists. No, technology is too important to be left to technologists alone. And so the public discourse must increase and deepen. When young people today who are so fascinated by digital everything are also beginning to question and to participate in creating new ground rules, in creating new customs around it, in not letting people get isolated, to bring society in, to use technology to connect and not to divide. This is going to require actual work. It's not going to happen on its own, okay? So you need a digital civil society as well. Just like you need civil society in the physical world, you need civil society in the digital world also, that is helping people to make sure and to make better policy to stop abuse of technology. helping to make sure the enabling policy helps people to connect via technology and achieve our social goals and not be thrown back into some Babel sort of space which we find ourselves in because of social media. None of these things are easy, Rajan, but they are absolutely critical if the digital and technology world is not going to overwhelm our humanitarian aspirations.
Now, and our humanitarian aspirations are now, moving to the Metaverse, right? Where our avatars are going to take shape and form. Where all the things that you say.
We can't assume that's going to happen. Let's not have self-fulfilling prophecies put out there. Much as Mr. Zuckerberg would like to.
What do you see? Where you have the ability to live another life in a digital world. What's your personal take? I mean, since you raised
no,
this.
I'm not at all equipped to speak on this. I find it. I'm very, in that sense, too old now, I suspect, to understand where this is heading. But I tell you, I believe in the life of the imagination. So I'm a writer, I'm a creative writer as well. So I can understand that urge. And, human beings evolve in so many directions. So while I understand it, I think we need to have a sane moral voice always that we can listen to.
No, I think you raised a very, very powerful point that, it's not only technologists who need to discuss and debate, when it talks of ethics. Today, we're talking of putting a chip in the brain that will change the capacity of brain utilization, right? What impact that could have on, on people, on humanity as a race, right? So while some will get ahead, what about the others? There's so much to do with ethics, man and machine working together. Machine is ordering man what to do, right? Is that why we created society? So
Imagine algorithms that will write new algorithms, okay? That's the final nightmare. So, and we are not at all far away from it. It's probably already here. So I think this is a time when we can go beyond divides between you and me and somebody else, because this is going to affect all of humanity, right? It's a great thing to unite around. What should humanity use technology in the future? And there are many authors like Harari who have talked about this at great length. There are so many philosophers who are beginning to talk about it. It's a great point for humanity to come together and discuss these things without animosity, right?
And this is definitely in our future to India at 100. And like what you said, it's here and now, it's happening. And many of the Indians are creating that for the world. So in some shape and form. So I think, it's an added responsibility,
We have to embrace these new technologies, embrace them. But as I keep saying, एक पैर accelerator पे हो सकता है, दूसरा थोड़ा सा brake पे होना चाहिए बस.
On that note, what a lovely way to say that we got to be cautious, but we still got to be able to move forward, together. And I think this only happens, what you rightly said, with the right satsang, the right set of people coming together to build, for the future of India. So Rohini, I'm going to take you up, on this journey as we move towards India at 100. Your satsang is infectious. And I'm sure it will be not only to every stakeholder, of society who is involved in shaping that new India, but even to many of the young people and inspire many people, to step up and do more. So again, it's been a wonderful, joy chatting with you and look forward to a lot more. I don't know how our time of 45 minutes just ran off, but we can keep chatting and look forward to more conversations, but more action also together as we move forward on this journey. So thank you.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Rajan. And thank you for all that you do, all of you do for this, our country. Thank you. Namaste.
Thank you. Namaste. Thank you.